Bitcoin is up 10% over the last 24 hours. And of course, the next question is what happens next? But let's just pause for a second, everyone. Bitcoin is pumping. It went exactly to where we talked about yesterday during our 3 p.m. live show. If you do not catch our show every single day, you're missing out. We talked about this exact move yesterday, and now it's time to look forward and try to predict what could happen next. I got a lot of things to go over using some historical data in this video, so make sure you watch the entire thing to look at what is happening in the world of Bitcoin. Let's go ahead and jump on over to the charts. You guys know the drill. If you enjoy the video, if you anything in the video pops off that you love, make sure to comment down below. Make sure to hit that like button. And if you're not subscribed, hit subscribe here as well. Yesterday, we talked about this move for Bitcoin. We had broken above this yellow line. We had been in a megaphone pattern here on Bitcoin, but after breaking through not only just the $53,000 mark, which was some significant resistance that we struggled with for a couple of days, we talked about the next move being up here roughly around 57,500. The technical price action we got to early this morning was exactly 57,464, but we did touch that platinum pocket, a move on the Fibonacci level all the way from back to previous all-time high to the current bear market lows. We discussed that after this $53,000 range, when you look at the fixed range volume profile, we had our nice gap right here at 53. If we broke above that, the peak would come in right in line with that level there at 57.5. Sure enough, that has happened. But the question is, now that we've moved there that fast, because that's where I'm going to be surprised about. Even though we predicted a move to 57.5 yesterday, I thought it would take a couple more days. I didn't think we would rally 10% in one day. Bitcoin is popping off for sure. But what happens next? Let's get into it. I want to, in this video, give you the bullish side, but also give you more realistic expectations and understanding of what is potentially possible in the next little bit. The first thing I want to acknowledge before we go too much further is since October, when we've had these crazy explosive rallies, we are seeing the momentum slow down. We're even seeing the volume slow down on the crazy bullishness. If you look here, did not mean to move that one. This is telling me, got to put this back. That is telling me the date, the expected date of the Bitcoin halving that will come up to be very important in this video. But you can see here, since the rally back here in October of this year, we rallied in this first little push up about 69%, almost 70%. Yes, we would go ahead and go a little bit higher, which could have made this push all the way up to 85, but I'm just going to stick with this one right here. The explosiveness was about a 60-70% push to the upside. Even within the first couple of days, we saw this push with something crazy about, if I can grab the tool once again, there we go. We saw within the first couple of days over a 30% push up very, very quickly. Then you move over here to the second pump that we just had here. This pump right here, about 37% within a couple of days here. Very explosive. Volume was once again high during this push up. The question, though, is can we get the volume and momentum to come in here as well? At the moment, if we were to reject here, let's go ahead and put my Fibonacci levels back just so we have those because they're nice and clean and give us a perspective of what could happen over the next couple of weeks, next couple of days. Let's put that back. Boom. All right. If we do reject here, this 13% rally over the last couple of days is not necessarily that significant. My point here is we're looking at potentially the momentum or the most recent pumps based off of ETF hype are slowing down. Even this one right here, even though we have the ETF now, continual bullishness floods the news, floods the market as the ETF continues to be successful. The question is, when do we cool back down? And now you get into a point where you're saying, all right, well, let's take a zoom out here and look at some potential Elliott wave theory that could come into play. Now, I have seen 140 people do Elliott waves, and I've seen Elliott waves explained 140 different ways. You're always going to have somebody disagree with something about Elliott wave theory, and while I do not profess to be an Elliott wave expert, there are people out there that know a lot more, and one of the fundamental teachings that I've learned from one of the smartest Elliott wave teachers I've ever heard was that you have to look at the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 waves, and you have to measure them. So in this case, what we see playing out here, I would say that this was wave one up to 32,000. We had our nice pullback here. That's wave two. Where we had our nice wave three, wave four, very small, and now we're working on wave five. Now the question is, does five end here at 57.5? Does it go up here to 63,000? Does it go even higher? How high could it actually go? I'm gonna go ahead and put it right here for right now because that's all we know about. But this is a rule that Elliott wave theory must respect. Wave three, the middle wave, wave 1, 3, and 5 are all bullish waves if you're in a bullish trend. Wave 3 is never going to be the shortest wave of all of those waves. And what we have currently is wave 1 was the biggest wave. Wave 1 saw Bitcoin's price increase 100, and let's just give it 107%. Well, wave 3 in this case saw Bitcoin rally about 97%. So it's smaller than wave 1. What this means is that wave 5 will be the shortest of these three waves. The problem is, if you're saying, well, is that helpful? Can we dictate what that means? All that means is that this wave is going to be less than 97%, which means we're not going to see it rally us up to 75,000, but we could see it get us back above 70,000 and see a new all-time high before a rejection. So are we going back up and double topping at previous all-time high? Are we coming up here to 63,000? A level we mentioned yesterday that if we break if we break 57.5, that's the next level. We're looking at 63. That answer I cannot give you, but what I can tell you is that Bitcoin will have some sort of at least an ABC correction coming very, very soon. Is it here? After a very minor rally on the fifth wave, do we get to 63? Do we double top? I do not know the answer to that, but I do want you to be prepared that a significant pullback, meaning 20 to 40%, still is in the cards with normal Elliott wave theory. Now, that's not my only thing I want to take a look at in this video, but that was the first thing I wanted to bring to your attention. Now let's kind of move into talking about how close we are to the halving event. And this has been a topic that has really kind of gone back and forth. Some people want to be really bullish about the halving event. Some people want to be very bearish. But what does history say about the halving event? A lot of people like to take a look at the May 11th, 2020 halving and talk about the massive rally that happened days before, weeks, months before coming into the actual halving event. I had the green line highlighted for you right there. And of course, after that massive dip down into COVID, we saw Bitcoin skyrocket about 159% into the halving. Really, we didn't see any type of major pullback. We just traded sideways and never dropped back below that price action before the bull market would go on. A lot of people are under the impression that we should see a repeat of this same thing. We're rallying into the halving, and the halving is just going to make us go up into the right, and within the next 3 months, we're going to hit $100,000, right? It's possible. If we repeat what happened on May 11th, we have a lot of ways to go to the upside, but we do repeat what happened back in 2020. But let's scroll back in history, and let's go back and look at previous halvings. For example, July 19th of 2020. Now, while we did have a rally going into the halving, you will notice here about 31 days before the actual halving event, we peak out and begin a drop, trade sideways into the halving, and then we drop another 20-something% after the halving event. So actually, historically, we have seen significant drops happen after the halving. Depending on when you want to start this drop, after the halving, we dropped roughly 30%. But if you were to count the 30 days before the halving event, how high we peaked, this pullback was a nice and healthy 40% pullback. If I were to go exactly right there, it's hard to get. There you go. 40% pullback here on July 19th. You scroll back even further and you come back to the one back in 2012, and we're not going to do the one before. This technically was the second halving. There was one technically right before this. But in this one, you see a couple of months before, we did see a nice 40% pullback. In fact, I think this actually is a 50% pullback. Let's take a look at that. But this is another case where 51% pullback a couple of months before the halving, then we trade sideways into the halving and then rally afterwards. Ultimately, we see a mixed bag of what price action could look like before and after the halving. But I will notice, and I will point out to you guys, this one we rally into the halving, have our nice pullback pre-halving before sideways and bullish momentum afterwards. This one we rally into the halving, then we pull back right before and pull back down after. This one here in 2020, we had our pullback months before and then rallied into it. we do have a little bit of a back and forth situation going. Is it potential that this was a bullish halving, that we did nothing but bullishness afterwards? This one had some bearishness after it. This one's bullish. And now the cycle is it's time to repeat potentially a 2016 halving where we rally into the halving event, potentially peak out and drop into the halvings, move sideways, and then continue our pullback. Again, historically, I have not seen any situation where we don't have at least some sort of significant pullback close to the halving event. This is 2020. It happened a couple of months before. This is 2016. It happened during the whole halving event. And this is 2012. It happened a couple of months before. Since we have not had a big pullback before the halving, this does lead me to believe that potentially 2024 could be one that we have a during/post pullback of the halving event. Yes, the halving will be amazingly bullish long-term for Bitcoin as it does slash the supply rate in half. However, it does not mean that we should ignore the laws of technical analysis, ignore the laws of bull markets where healthy corrections with higher highs and higher lows happen in a bullish fashion. That just makes us sit here and wonder, what is the top that happens here? Is it 57.5? Is it going to be 63? Is it going to be a double top up here at 69,000? That one I cannot answer you, but I will say if we were to repeat and kind of mimic what we saw back in 2016, and we saw 31 days before the halving be the top, that would put the top date looking somewhere around March 18th, 1 month before April 18th, the expected halving date. Keep an eye. We still have some time for a rally into that. We also could go ahead and start this correction early. Either way, though, I still believe at least 20%, if not 40%, is still in the cards. And the levels you should be looking at, while 32K, the untapped resistance is the level we talked about before, I will admit that the more bullish and further we get away from it, the less likely we are to pull back down that significantly. I will go ahead, though, and still point out the 48 to 46K range is still looking nice and juicy. Another reason for that is because even though we back tested it once, remember we have this very long historical line right here that goes all the way back to 2017. It has been both support and resistance. Most recently, we have broken it. We turned it into support. It would be a perfect scenario to start falling back down to those levels and potentially hit that dotted white line again sometime in June before the real explosive bull market happens. If this were to happen, we would look almost identical to the moves of what happened July 19th back in 2016. However, that is all that I'm seeing here for today, and is just my opinion. This could be a new norm. This could see Bitcoin continue to just do nothing but skyrocket up and to the right. What do you guys think? Last thing I want to show you actually before we leave here, remember on high blocks, the liquidations, we talked about the 63. I still think Bitcoin can get there, but the other reason to suspect potentially a 48 to 46K Bitcoin is the heavy liquidity we have down here on this chart. That is all I have for you guys in this video. Let me know in the comments, do you agree, do you disagree? What do you think Bitcoin is going to do over the next couple of weeks, next couple of months? Let me know what your bull market top is as well, and I'll be making another Bitcoin price prediction for the bull market here in the next couple of weeks. With that said, though, smash that like button, hit subscribe. I'll see you guys in the next video. Adios.